Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome, and come drop in and say hi. I might not be able to read your comments as that happens when I'm live often, so hopefully that won't, because we want to be interactive today. We have a workshop to present on boundaries, and so if you have a strong-willed kid and you're struggling with setting boundaries, then this is for you. It's definitely for you, even if you just need to set boundaries in your life. And we've heard that all the time, right? How many times have you heard that to be healthy, you need to set strong boundaries? And then the question is, how do we do this when other people are pushing back, or we're not even sure, excuse me, what to do, right? It's like a whole very complex set of interactions and feelings and belief systems around this. And so I'm going to just simplify it down to small doable steps today that will help you. Gosh, my throat. We'll see how we do today. But yeah, definitely say hi, #replay if you're catching the replay. I am Christine O'Brien, and I have been working with children and families for almost 30 years and have my own family. And so I have this personal experience with setting boundaries and doing life and really having an eye for creating bigger, better life than I ever thought possible. And through the KonMari method, which is where this group came from, I really have let go of a lot of things and created a life that is really much more satisfying and really shifting generational patterns of well-being and wealth. And I want to start out today with a celebration. If you know me, we like to celebrate around here. And I had a really perfect interaction with my daughter this morning where she was really setting a boundary. And so I'll tell this story, and then there'll be elements with it. And then also you can get out paper and pen, because I have some actual questions for you to work through. If you're in the replay, you can pause and do the questions. But let me get my voice ready. Okay, so this morning was just such a good example of setting boundaries. I guess, what is a boundary? That's a good question to start out with. So if you kind of think about what that means to you, you can take some time to consider it. And I'm just going to tell a story, and then I'll get back to some ideas about how I see boundaries. All right, so this morning I'm like getting breakfast ready and setting up for the day, and my daughter is homeschooled, so we do morning kind of figuring out what's happening. We got invited to go to the beach this afternoon, and so I started talking to my daughter, and she was in the middle of her creative project that she was doing. And usually when leaving the house, especially if she's doing something creative, is like a no-go. It's very challenging. She doesn't want to leave the house ever because it's so nice here. And she just always loves what she's doing right now. And so when I asked her, well, we have this invitation for the beach and that, and immediately she was like, no. And then she's like, well, don't ask me right now. I'm in the middle of something I really like, so you can ask me later. And that was just such a brilliant example of awareness of what your needs are, awareness of, and then asking for it. Oh, someone gave a like. I can see that. Oh, cool. That was funny. Yay, thumbs up. So it was just totally brilliant that she had that ability to be reflective. And then, so now we're going to the beach later, but it's such a simple, good example of that awareness of yourself and then requesting what your need is. And so yeah, that's how you do boundaries. That's the end of the whole thing. It can just be so simple. Just joking. So let's get into that and maybe think about where have you or your child set a good boundary that just felt good and people felt respected. It was a mutual respect. I think what happens often is that feeling like you need to be over, like you need to be the one in power, and so then the child needs to be under you, or if it's someone else, that it's like you're above and they're below, so you're powering over, which then there's not mutual respect, which damages relationships and then also causes like less likely to have compliance and cooperation if you're trying to power over someone rather than be on the same team, which is a huge, huge shift for our society, maybe around the world, but definitely where I am, is that, especially that there's a shift now, but that's like the old school way, that there's an adult over and then you have to be the boss. And that's where we feel like boundaries come from. But they don't always work, right? So if you've had experiences where you're like setting a boundary and people don't feel respected and you don't feel respected too, that you could look at that. So that could be part of the block to boundaries. But let's start out with this question. What do you want to feel in your life on a day-to-day basis? How do you want to feel? How do you want to be treated? And how do you want to handle challenges? Like when challenges arise, because even for me, who has 29 years of education and experience as teacher, teacher's coach, parenting coach, studied all the things from Montessori to Waldorf to Reggio, like all the curriculums, all like whatever the thing is, psychology, studied and studied and studied and have all this knowledge, and then also worked with many families and many schools and kids and teachers and all these things. So I have all this experience, and I'm a human mom with a child who is strong-willed, who is, we're figuring this out together and what works for us. So that part is really important, to know what you want. So have that awareness, like my daughter demonstrated earlier, is just having that awareness of, I don't think this conversation is going to go well right now, but I do want to have it, but I want to have it later when I'm not doing this fun thing. And so just having that clarity and communication about it. So yeah, if you think into what you want, and if you're here, you could post and see if I can see it. So I see there's some people watching, but I don't see any posting. So say hi, see if I can see it. But oh, I'm getting over a cold. That's the problem is. So that's the first thing. We always want to start out with that awareness of what do we really want. And oftentimes there's a block even to our awareness around what we want, because we've had so many experiences of not being allowed to have what we want. And so there's like an uncovering there. If you're having a challenge with that, sometimes it's easier to think about what you don't want, and then you could flip it to, so for example, I don't want to be fighting, or I don't want to feel like I'm in a power struggle around the rules in the house, or I want to feel clarity about what the rules are. I want to feel respected, to be respected and feel respected, and for my children to listen, and for us to have fun together. Along those lines. I'm not seeing any comments, so it might just be because I'm live. All right, and so then the next question is, what are the blocks? What are the blocks to you experiencing this more sense of peace, of collaboration, of listening, of respect, mutual respect? What's getting in the way of that? So you can take a time now and pause on the replay to consider what are the blocks to this. And it may be internal, external, all the things. So I'll just brainstorm some of the blocks that I'm familiar with personally or with my clients. And one thing that's interesting about being a mom and setting boundaries is that often if we've been pregnant, or, sometimes you're a mom and you didn't carry the child for whatever reason, if they're adopted or they were surrogate. But still, even as a baby, they're close to you all the time. And so there's this like physical proximity. One, it's like you're pregnant, you're one with the child, and then they're born and you're holding them often. And there's this closeness and there's this development that they go through. So they go through these stages and they have different needs in those times, and they move further from us, but they start physically one or very closely connected. And that's actually just part of a changing need that we have as we develop and grow, and how our relationship is. So when you think of that in terms of setting boundaries, it's like, but we're one. And you might even feel like the baby feels like they're connected with the mom or caregiver for, oh my goodness, how long is it? It's like until 1 year old. You can correct me, I don't remember the age, but it's like through these phases in their growing awareness of their own body, and then that they're separate from us. And we can have those kind of confused, unsure, like, okay, now they're this age, and what are their needs, and how is this affecting me to be that close? And so giving yourself some grace around not really knowing every moment, like what the need is of yourself or of your child, and giving yourself space to work through what your needs are. And then when they get to 2 and they're more asserting themselves, then there's a whole new ball game of what is needed, right? And then for me, I'm in the preteen stage, so that is a whole nother level, and we go through these phases and it's constantly changing. And so you're trying to be calm, consistent with a changing target, changing needs, changing development, changing ability. And it can be really hard to know, is this like normal? Should I expect this from my child? What can I expect? And so that is a huge block that I see for families, trying to have clear boundaries and understanding in that piece of development changing, and as we're growing older, changing, as you have multiple children, things changing, so much change through this. So the boundary, it's like, what we've heard is like, you need strong boundaries in a certain way. And then that's what the experts say, right? Like, okay, have these boundaries, but how? Because this is not just like every day is the same situation, same person. It's like, okay, now there's multiple kids. Now there's this other thing. So that complexity is a challenge. And as I mentioned, that being uncertain of what you even want, maybe uncertain about what your values are, and if they match with your co-parent or your partner, your husband, wife, like, are you on the same page with each other? And so then there's another layer to communicate about and have clear understanding. And then there could be over time that you feel like, well, I've asked for what I need before and it didn't work out, or they're just not respecting, they're not listening to me, and having this mindset around it that it's a failure, that it's not going to work anyway, and kind of being defeated around it. So then that makes you want to power over, right? Get like stronger to be like, okay, I'm the boss and this needs to happen, and then leading to inconsistency. So if you're pinpointing some things for you, maybe I've said it, maybe you have a different block you feel to having awareness of what your needs are and setting a limit. I feel moved to tell another story that happened recently with my daughter, and sorry, maybe I shouldn't say, maybe it's just someone. I don't know, it's tricky to have privacy and want to talk about things. So let me think. Yeah, so I'm going to tell it from my perspective. And so I have this little purse, and I have actually 3 types of lip protection chapstick stuff. And my daughter didn't like any single one of them. She didn't like the taste or the like spiciness. Sometimes the peppermint is too strong. She didn't like any of them. And she was like really upset with me that I didn't like make an effort to look and see, is there another one in the car that she could use? So I just kind of brainstormed like, oh, maybe there's one in the seat there. What's that thing called? Like between the seats, there's a little container. Anyway, oh my gosh, side pocket or something. Anyway, so I just suggested that, and she found one that she liked. And she was so mad at me that I didn't do it for her. And so to me, this feels like a boundary of allowing her to have her feelings and be like, oh yeah, I can see, what did I say? I was like, well, I have these 3 choices and that's what it is. And I see that you're upset about it and that's okay. And I didn't feel like, oh, like I should do more, I should be better. Like I just felt like, oh, having 3 choices is good, and you can also have your feelings about it. And then I was glad that you found what you needed, if that's a good example or not, if that makes sense. Like where the thing that's important to me about setting a boundary is that when you set it, it feels good to everyone. And I think that's like, well, I should caveat that. It might not feel good to the other person insofar as they wanted you to help them, or they want to use the device, or their kids might be like frustrated, but not feel disrespected. If you can, differentiate between those 2 things. And if you're holding in yourself, like in your heart, in your being, that it's like, I feel clear that that was a boundary for me, that I wasn't going to start searching everywhere in the car, like get into a frenzy to meet her needs in that moment when there were viable choices, in my opinion. If that makes sense, where it's like you feel clear, and it might be like a little twinge of something. Yeah. Anyway, it's complicated when I think of this and try and think of other perspectives or stories or circumstances. Then it's not like, you're not always going to feel great about it, but you would feel confident and calm, and that you have connected with your values, what's important to you, and expressed that and created this environment where you get to ask for what you want and then be solid as there's feedback about that. So the next question. So the first question was, what do you really want? How do you want to feel, be treated? And how do you want to handle challenges? The next question was, what are the blocks? And then this question is, how can you align with your wants, your desires, and your values in a way that's aligned with your heart, body, and mind? And so that you feel calm and confident through all the daily limit setting. And one of the things that I noticed is that we can be looking for validation from our kids that we're good parents. Like, are they doing good in school? Are they cooperating? Are they in a good mood? Like, when we connect our value as a mom with them and their emotions and behavior and accomplishments, that can make it hard to set boundaries. So this is a block, I would say. Something to get clear about and kind of notice in your own life if you recognize that it's hard to hold boundaries, and kind of exploring the layers of what's happening for you and your family around that. And one piece that's common is that looking for that external validation that you're a good mom. And when something happens, they make a mess, they don't listen, they don't do the thing properly, making that mean that they're disrespecting you. I think that's a really common feeling that we can react to, and then things go sideways if we're coming from that place of needing validation and then not getting it, and then kind of scrambling inside about wanting to be like the boss and hold boundaries like you're supposed to, but needing to really validate yourself first, which can be a journey and be part of that. Well, one thing about that is going back to your celebrations and really seeing like, oh, I did this really well. I came from this situation in my own growing up where, you know, now I'm acting in a way that feels better. I'm changing generational patterns. I looking and seeing that side of you that is capable, and there are places where you do have clear boundaries and you're not seeking validation, but maybe there's some areas where you can make some shifts. And so that would be that alignment, like what needs to shift so that you can feel more in alignment with setting boundaries and having that clarity at home with your family. So I don't see any comments, which is sad, but because this is a good, you know, we should do, this is part of how I support families, and one we call the joy map session. So we bring out like, what do you want more of? And what feels really good? What do you love doing with your family? What things are working well? And how do we build on that? And then you get into that, like, what's not. Okay, it's what you don't want can shift into what you do want, if that makes sense. So just getting that calm confidence that you know what your values are and what your wants are. And so the values piece is you have a North Star so that you can just know, like, your top value in this situation is mutual respect or mental health or whatever that top priority is in that moment, being able to have that to fall back on, to be able to set boundaries in your family that feel good and feel like mutual respect, and that there's an understanding, and there might be a crossing of boundaries and you have a pathway for education, for managing that in a way that feels powerful and you feel confident in it, and it builds relationship with your kids in over time. So those are things that I help people with, and I would be really delighted to help you with that. And I have different ways of working with me, either in groups or one-on-one, and I'm always open in the DMs to talk about what is available. And I do like to mention the Joy Map session in the North Star, so you can get real clarity about these important areas and understanding yourself and understanding your kids, like I was mentioning before, as they're changing and growing. And often, you know, it's 30 years of studying and working with all kinds of families and children, and this that I can have that perspective of what to expect at different ages and how to manage your emotions around when your kids aren't listening to you, and how you can get into a pattern of things working less and less as you continue with these same strategies that don't work. But how do you know another strategy unless you get support? Anyway, that is our beginning conversation about boundaries. And like I said, trying to simplify something that is fairly complex. But the main things are to have awareness of what your needs are, what's happening for you. If you're feeling disrespected, where is that coming from? Are the kids actually being disrespectful, or they just need a learning? There's like a development that hasn't taken place yet, or an education. Or maybe actually, you know, one of the blocks I didn't mention is there's a diagnosis that you have or that they have that makes things not necessarily fit with what the standard expert answer is to your family. So there might be some different needs along with development is also diagnosis and ways of how the people's brains are working in the situation and how to manage with that layer, which is more and more common these days, to be able to have clarity around needs, awareness of yourself and your child, and then knowing action to take. What can you do? What can you do to make it feel the way that you want to, and stay calm and confident and connected, and building relationship, and also being a leader at the same, like I was saying, on a team, knowing that you're on a team and you have the same North Star that your family is going towards, so that it feels good. Yay. All right, happy to see you here today, and definitely put in your comments. It will be, I'll come back around to it, but I would love to hear how the workshop was for you, if you had any insights, if you understand your wants and needs and how to express them, and then what the blocks are, and then the alignment piece of getting into action on your North Star and your joy map and having that. So yeah, yay. Thanks for being here. Catch you next week.